support this war when it was obvious to everybody from the very beginning that even if there was a compelling case for attacking Iran, you don't do it in the company of a genocidal maniac and a lunatic Mango Mussolini.
James O'Brien has absolutely unleashed here, and this time he's not just taking aim at Donald Trump. He's questioning how an entire political and media establishment ended up backing a war that the British public increasingly wants nothing to do with. But the part that really triggered this extraordinary rant, that's where things get very interesting.
Honestly, the way in which Donald Trump will conduct this war is to sow just complete and utter confusion. And by the way, I don't think it's a tactic. I used to think it was a tactic. I used to think it was a modus operandi. But I don't think he can operate in any different way. He is just entirely chaotic. And sadly, he's arrived in a position of prominence at a time in human history when many people are drawn to the chaos. Because I said to you, I think this time last week, that he would be so vague and so contradictory about what the aims of war were that he would claim victory even in the face of fairly epic and obvious failure. If I told you that The Guardian and the Daily Telegraph today make the same pun on the name of the Iran war, the American name of the Iran war. They've called it the Operation Epic Force. And the Guardian and the Telegraph, the polar opposites in many ways of political partisanship in this country, they both go for the same pun and call it Operation Epic Failure. They both moot the possibility, a very real possibility, if not the already apparent reality, that this is an obvious failure. And he will claim a victory, even as he claims that it's going to be over soon but not soon. It's going to be a complete but not complete victory. There's going to be regime change but no regime change. There's going to be, there are weapons that need to be removed but they haven't been removed. There weren't weapons that needed to be removed but they have been removed. I could sit here for 20 minutes. Well, I think we both know I probably will. I could sit here for 20 minutes and list all of the obvious, self-contained contradictions. So within a moment of saying one thing, he will say another thing. There was a beautiful example, if beautiful is the right word. There is an example from yesterday's speech, yesterday's unprompted press conference, which was a masterclass in all of the things that I have described to you. All of the things that I've described to you since this started, since he became president, really. But since this latest term began, all of the things I've described to you, the shillying and the shallying, the reversal and the ferreting, the contradiction and the confusion, all of it is on full display. So yesterday, when he was speaking about an attack on a school in Iran, the bombing of a school, a girls' school in Iran, he moved in the space of a single moment from lying from one lie to another, but both lies were contradictory. It's impossible to exaggerate how significant this is. So he tells a lie about the Tomahawk missiles that evidence now shows 99.9% certainty, and there's always room for doubt, don't forget, came from US fighter jets, US aeroplanes, gets picked up on it by a journalist and tells a different lie. Have we got both lies ready? Because I just think sometimes I worry that I'm the only person pointing this out, or I worry that I'm the only person noticing this, because I look at the rest of the media and they haven't even mentioned the YouGov polling on where the British public stands on this war. Did you know, because I can think off the top of my head of half a dozen people who won't have told you yet, that the opposition to US military action is up by 10 points in a week, standing at a frankly extraordinary 59% of people polled say they are opposed to the military action undertaken by the United States. So the whole shebang. Regardless of the UK involvement, we are in numbers that have not been seen in a very long time, united in our opposition to the whole project. But, of course, because we live in a country where public discourse is defined by the terminally wrong, the cheerleaders for the four donkeys of the Cripocalypse, Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, austerity, and latterly, of course, the fifth member of that hideous troop, Donald Trump, being wrong about all of those things, hideously, catastrophically, nation-damagingly wrong about all of those things, what do next? They cash their check and move on to the next thing that they're wrong about. It is, I mean, it's odd, really. I could be very... what's the word that I want? Disconsolate about it. And I am until I start talking to you. As soon as I start talking to you in the morning, I actually begin to feel rather better about things. For example, you help me. Jane was in touch on Blue Sky with some quotes from Jonathan Swift that must be, 300 or 400 years old, describing almost perfectly the kind of politics that Donald Trump represents. There's something reassuring in knowing that this nonsense has happened before. There's something reassuring about the cyclical nature of history. The good rise, the good fall, the mad rise, the mad fall. It has happened before and it's never over. It's despite the best efforts of the historian Francis Fukuyama, history is never over. It sometimes just involves the really, really bad stuff going into hibernation for a while. Well, it's not in hibernation now. Anyway, look, just before I forget, here is an example. So a girls' school in Iran was bombed very early on in the war by the Americans. This is Donald Trump talking about it a minute before he said something else.
Missile strike and a Tomahawk missile likely destroyed that Iranian girls' school. So will the U.S. accept any responsibility?
Well, I haven't seen it, and I will say that the Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries, you know that. And whether it's Iran, who also has some Tomahawks, I wish they had more, but whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a Tomahawk is very generic, it's sold to other countries, but that's being investigated right now.
So he lies and he lies and he lies again. Of course he's seen it. He's the commander-in-chief of the United States military, and there is well-documented and widespread, widely disseminated evidence of what has happened here. The footage that has been examined by everybody from the New York Times to, the Arkansas Bugle is out there in the public space. A man who spends his entire life on social media is claiming that he's somehow missed it. Oh, and by the way, Iran has Tomahawk missiles as well. But, it's Donald Trump. He lies. I can't remember the last time he told a completely different and contradictory lie quite so quickly after the last lie.
You just suggested that Iran somehow got its hands on a Tomahawk and bombed its own elementary school on the first day of the war. But you're the only person in your government saying this. Even your defense secretary wouldn't say that when he was asked, standing over your shoulder on your plane on Saturday. Why are you the only person saying this?
Because I just don't know enough about it. I think it's something that I was told is under investigation. But Tomahawks are used by others, as you know. Numerous other nations have Tomahawks. They buy them from us. But I will certainly, whatever the report shows, I'm willing to live with that report.
So he lies and then he lies again and then he lies again, and then members of his regime tell different lies or occasionally tell the truth, but he undoes the truth by telling a lie, and suddenly nobody knows what's what. Nobody knows whether up is down, black is white, freedom is slavery, or ignorance is strength. And he will claim that he won the war, even though the Ayatollah has been replaced currently by his own son. Even though none of the Gulf states that they were told, and I wonder whether Benjamin Netanyahu told Donald Trump that they would all weigh in on his side, none of the Gulf states want a piece of this. None of them want any of this. Senior member of the sort of UAE ruling class making it clear yesterday how they feel about Donald Trump starting a hideous and dangerous war smack in the middle of their backyard, not his. And here we are. I must get the name of that journalist, actually. I did have it in front of me, but I've not got the piece of paper. What I have got in front of me, as always, is a piece of paper with about 5 words on it. That's how I like to start the show. In fact, today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I had 5 words, and then I've just added another one and drawn a box around it. The 6th word is liar. So here are the 3 things I wrote down before I came on air this morning. Is that too faint for you to see? And those 3 phrases or 5 words, 3 points: refugees, terrorism, cost of living. Okay? I don't care what your politics is. I don't care how tightly your scarf is knotted around your neck, to the point, for many people, that it's cut off the flow of blood to the brain. Can we all agree that creating more refugees, creating more terrorism, and but negatively impacting the cost of living are bad things? I personally don't have a problem with refugees, but I'd rather they weren't refugees. Some people, of course, want to set fire to them in their own beds, and they are invited onto stage at Nigel Farage's party conferences and treated like folk heroes in organs like the Daily Telegraph. So some murderous, evil people want to kill refugees or encourage other people to kill them. I'm not one of those people, but I don't want more refugees, because if there are more refugees in the world, it means they are fleeing war, famine, pestilence. They are fleeing horrors. And Donald Trump has just visited horrors upon Iran, which is currently, before this war even started, the country from which the third highest number of human souls crossing the English Channel in small dinghies hail. So we already have an Iranian refugee crisis, and Donald Trump has just made it even bigger. Terrorism. Can we all agree that terrorism is bad? I'm not a big fan of banning people from the programme, but if you don't agree that terrorism is bad, we're probably going to fall out. Let's say extremist Islamist terrorism, if you want to be quite specific about it. Let's get rid of that as well. Let's say that is a very, very bad thing. What do you think this is going to do in the context of terrorism or state-sponsored terrorism, or even if they were to successfully dismantle the Iranian regime? Spoiler alert, they're not going to. It's too difficult. He'll give up and claim victory before it's even over. Then this would have enhanced that likelihood. Just as the way in which the genocide in Gaza has created 2, 3, 4 more generations of people who will hate the state of Israel. Whoever is in charge, even if and when they get rid of the war criminals and psychopaths who currently dominate Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, even when they're long gone, the hatred that they've engendered among people right across the region will stay for generations. So if you're in favour of the war in Iran, you're in favour of more refugees coming to Britain. If you're in favour of the war in Iran, you're in favour of more terrorism blighting the West. And if you're in favour of the war in Iran, you're all for increases in the cost of living in the United Kingdom. Because that's the other thing that you can extrapolate from yesterday's YouGov polling that has been completely ignored by every single journalist and editor in the country who told you that the war in Iran was a good thing. Everybody knows that it's going to have a negative effect on our cost of living. If you have your oil delivered, and we used to, when I lived on a farm in Worcestershire, we had our oil delivered. Just for the avoidance of doubt, we weren't farmers, but we lived on a farm. It's not complicated, but I did see something on Twitter about 6 months ago that failed to understand that simple distinction. On the farm that we inhabited in Worcestershire, we used to have our oil delivered. That's gone up by double. More in some cases. Cost of living will go up. Some people are responding to the fact that our reliance upon fossil fuels makes us incredibly vulnerable at this point in a historical cycle by claiming that we should be more reliant on fossil fuels. If ever there was a twin case for pursuing sustainability and net zero at 1 million miles an hour, it would be Ukraine and Iran. Imagine if we were able to keep the home fires burning without actually burning any fossil fuels. But no, they'll be queuing up to tell you we need to drill in the North Sea, we need more fossil fuels, why can't we dig up our own coal? Whatever the argument will be, we must be more reliant upon a finite resource that is incredibly bad for everybody, and not reliant upon an infinite resource that doesn't do anybody any harm ever. And then we come back to the people who told you that the war in Iran would be a good thing. The people in favour of more refugees coming to the United Kingdom, the people in favour of more terrorism, perhaps affecting the United Kingdom, and the people in favour of increased costs of living for everybody in the United Kingdom. And they're in charge of everything. They write all the front pages. The BBC slavishly follows where the newspapers lead, covers things in the same way, analyses Donald Trump's comments from yesterday without adding, he lies all the time. He cannot be trusted. And even if he accidentally says something that's true, he will say the polar opposite 2 minutes later. That's not an opinion. That is counting. And as I said to you a week ago, none of us know how to do this. None of us know how to report upon something so obviously unreliable, so profoundly fraudulent, so utterly, utterly dishonest. How do you report on someone? Imagine if it was a football commentator telling you that a goal had been scored when it hadn't. How do you report on that game if you're relying upon that football commentator's analysis? Oh, it's 3-0 to the Reds, but the Blues just scored 5 goals. It's 3-0 to the Reds. Well, I haven't seen it. Well, we're having an inquiry. Well, if it turns out that the Blues are 5-0 up, then I will go. I can live with that report. Lie, 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 lie. And this, of course, is so obvious. This is so clear. This is undeniable. This is irrefutable. The British public, despite being so poorly served by the Fourth Estate, by various journalists and broadcasters who have been feeding them lies, poison and nonsense now for the best part of 3 decades, the British public this time saw through it. Because the polling is absolutely extraordinary. Would you like a little giggle as we survey incredibly serious territory? Since Kemi Badenoch came out squarely in favour of more war, Conservative supporters have turned against the war by a factor of 10. So Conservative support for this war has gone down by 10 points since Kemi Badenoch started rattling her sabre, her Fisher-Price sabre, and banging her Tonka drum. Tonka don't make drums, do they? But I don't imagine Fisher-Price makes sabres either, but you take my point. So the British public, this time, has seen through it. Didn't see through Brexit, didn't see through Boris Johnson, didn't see through Liz Truss, didn't see through austerity. But the British public, the plurality of the British public, a significant majority of the British public want absolutely nothing to do with any of this. 60%, 59 to be precise, are opposed to the military action. 25% are in favour of it. And they are, of course, the people who will claim that they despise refugees, that they hate terrorism, and that it's all Labour's fault that the cost of living is coming down. Absolutely bonkers. So there are, once again, 2 questions that I need your help with this morning. Before that, the journalist who you heard, Sean McCreesh of the New York Times, was the one that hit him hardest in the second question, and Manu Raju of CNN made the original point. Great journalism. You can still do it if you can get into that big room, but you're not going to be getting into the kind of scenarios where they attack Volodymyr Zelensky. So there are still good journalists out there in this country and in the United States of America, and goodness knows we need to look after them. Because this time, the bad journalists have not succeeded. The bad politicians have not prevailed. The British public has not bought it. They won't be fooled again until, of course, we are. And that's what I want to know. I want to know why. Why on this one, and to a lesser extent on the genocide in Gaza, which again you would not know public opinion on from looking at any newspapers or most broadcast platforms. Why on this issue have the massed ranks of the marriage between right-wing media and right-wing politicians, why has it failed so completely? Even as they parked their metaphorical tanks on the lawn, the numbers supporting this war have gone down. Even as Kemi Badenoch did a tour of all the television studios shortly after giving herself an inspirational pep talk in the mirror in the ladies' toilet, the support for the war went down. The Daily Mail came out all guns blazing and support for the war went down. The Daily Telegraph described it as a national necessity and Keir Starmer's failure to get involved as a national shame, and support for the war went down. Dick by name Little John in the Daily Mail described it as the thing that made him more ashamed to be British than anything that has ever gone on before, up to and including the time that he based his views on what the country was like on a 25-year-old episode of The Bill. And support for the war went down. So they've tried everything. They've launched everything. They've pulled every lever. They've nudged every... well, you can't nudge focus groups, but they've co-opted every op-ed page. They've written every headline. They have tried absolutely everything. And it has failed on a scale I can't remember seeing before in Britain. Certainly not in Brexit Britain. I can't remember seeing all of the usual suspects, all of the usual engines of corruption and destruction and nation-damaging idiocy. I can't remember seeing them all fail so completely. And I want you to tell me why. I want you to tell me 2 things today. Why? And I worry as I get older that I'm becoming less mellow. In some ways I'm becoming more mellow, but I no longer worry about using words that you might find offensive. They are idiots. They are murderous idiots, the people that have been calling for more war. They are measurably stupid. They are ignorant of everything from what happened in Iraq right through to the Chilcot inquiry and the 10 points that emerged from that as things you must do before going to war. And guess what? I've got it laminated. If you weren't listening yesterday, you probably think I've gone even madder than usual. But I've actually got it laminated. I've got the Chilcot checklist laminated within 24 hours of asking for it. This is what Emily Maitlis feels like every day in this building. She asks for something and it happens. And if you don't believe me and you're listening on the radio, that is the sound. What's the noun for something that's been laminated, Keith? Laminant? Is it a laminant? Anyway, that is the sound of a laminated document, children. And they're ignoring that as well. So, question number one. Why 0345 6060973 are the British public, why have the British public seen through this one when they haven't seen through the previous five? 0345 6060973. And what on earth possessed the Farages, the Badenochs, the Little Johns, the Ted Verity, who edits the Daily Mail? I can't remember the name of whoever edits the Daily Telegraph at the moment. But what on earth possessed all of the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, the Murdoch Munchkins? What on earth possessed them all to support this war when it was obvious to everybody from the very beginning that even if there was a compelling case for attacking Iran, you don't do it in the company of a genocidal maniac and a lunatic Mango Mussolini? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to tell me one or two of two things. Why has the British public got it right this time? 0345 6060 973. And why did the massed ranks of cheerleaders for the four donkeys of the Crepopolis decide to back this madness at this time, led by this sociopath?
What this video really shows is just how strongly James O'Brien believes the argument for this war has started to fall apart. Throughout the discussion, he keeps coming back to Donald Trump's contradictions, the confusion around what the actual objectives are, and the way Trump can appear to say one thing and then completely reverse himself moments later. But O'Brien's bigger argument goes beyond Trump himself. He also turns his attention to the politicians, newspapers, and commentators who supported military action, while pointing out that public opinion in Britain appears to be moving in the opposite direction. For him, that raises a much bigger question about why the usual political and media pressure seems to have failed to convince the public this time. He also connects the war to wider concerns like refugees, terrorism, and the cost of living, arguing that the consequences could eventually be felt far beyond Iran itself. Now, whether you agree with James O'Brien's assessment or think he's being far too harsh, I'd really like to know what you make of it. Do you think the British public has seen through this one, or do you think O'Brien is completely wrong? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more British political commentary and reactions.